Well, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We're going to be bringing you some breaking political news out of Kentucky, an eye on education in Lexington. We're going to dig into Kentucky and Trump's fascination with coal, why the economics of fossil fuels are being ignored, with preeminent climate author and activist Bill McKibben in a conversation inspired and informed by his new book, Here Comes the Sun, out now. So should be an awesome episode. So glad you've chosen to join us this week. But before we get into that, I want to just check in, make sure you are feeling it and that you are ready to help create a more compassionate Commonwealth. Folks, you know, we really need some significant political change in Kentucky. For the next 14 months, Progress Kentucky is going to be solely focused on flipping the 6th district. But when we talk about that, you know, obviously we need to check on Trump flipping the House to Democratic control. Won't solve all of our problems, but it'll give a chance to put a halt to some of the worst actions, perhaps, of the Trump administration. Maybe we'll see. Better than nothing. But not just about flipping the 6th district, Central Kentucky's 6th district. We're also looking at where in that 6th district our time and energy would be best spent, and potentially letting us hold and flip key state house seats as well. So within that area, it's a big job. It's going to take volunteers. It's going to take time. It's going to take resources. We need your help. Please make a monthly contribution right now via our secure online website, Act Blue, to help turn Kentucky purple. Really, anything you can do, $10, $20, $200. It all adds up. It all makes a big difference for our efforts. So hope you can kick in, help out, and we'll appreciate whatever you can do. All right, now let's check in with our co-host. Let us know who you are, where you are, and who's on your biting list. I don't know if I said that right. Let's check in with our first co-host who knows how to do that. Nema, how are you?
I'm doing well. Coming to you tonight, Aaron, from lovely Kenwood, or as I like to affectionately call it, the Wood, here in lovely northeast, I think, Fayette County. Anyway, and on my biting list, and you said it, that's pretty good, Aaron. On my biting list is scabs, people who don't support unions. That's on my biting list. They're always on my biting list. You know, they're at the top, right next to Matt Bevin. So definitely scabs, union busters, biting list.
Scabs are the
Kim,
worst.
What you got?
Kimberly?
They're the worst.
Kimberly, you here? Who are you? Where are you? What time is it?
I am Kimberly Cecil Jones, and I'm coming to you live from Dammam, Saudi Arabia, and it is 2:07 a.m. in the morning. That's how much I love Kernels of Truth. Yeah. Wow. So on my Biden list.
The Biden list. Who's on your Biden list?
Okay, the Biden. I'm biting it. Okay, biting list. Okay. I'm not a dog though, but I'm just biting it.
Because you got the rabies. If you get the rabies, who's going to be on your biting list? That's the song.
That's all right, Aaron. You're my little brother, and don't make me call you a mangy dog, okay?
What are you saying? I don't got the mange.
You know what? I haven't seen a dog over here. I wonder why. Anyway, or a cat. It's really weird. But anyway, country music is being played right now as we speak. Everybody here stays up pretty late and gets up late in the day, so I like that. But on my biting list, and it may be this way every week, is Trump.
Yeah.
You know what they say.
Yeah.
Stuff
it's a little obvious, but sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, stuff starts at the top and it rolls downhill. And I feel like we've been in this presidency for 20 years and it hasn't even been a year yet. Can you believe that? It hasn't even been a year. And it's starting to affect more and more and more people. So I'm going to say he's on the Biden list this week because of the simple fact that his policies and what he's trying to do to the Ukraine and his backdoor deals and his backdoor way of doing things with his cognitive decline, and that I don't even know what that meeting was with Putin. That was crazy. So he's on the list this week. Matter of fact, he's on the Biden list every day. Okay, let's just put it like that, every day.
Fair enough. Yeah. Obvious but important. So I concur on all the folks. I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Chilesburg in Lexington. Lovely deed restricted community with lots and lots of vinyl siding. And on my Biden list, and we started this last week because we had Silas House on the show, and if folks know, Silas House has a bit of a personal connection, professional connection to our man Tyler Childers, who has just released a new album, Snipe Hunter, which includes the song Biden List. If you've not heard that, you got to listen to that jam. It is catchy, it is hilarious, and I think it springs from his Eastern Kentucky roots in a real way. So, who's on your Biden list if you get the rabies? And I'm putting Russell Vogt, the guy who's at OMB, who's actually the one implementing Project 2025. Remember Project 2025? Remember how outraged we were when we heard about Project 2025 on the campaign trail, and Trump is like, "Oh, I don't even know what that is. It's got some bad things, good things, bad things in it. I don't even know what it is." But then he goes ahead and appoints the lead author of it to be the head of OMB, which is the agency that's the super agency that tells other federal agencies what to do. So yeah, he was called out, I think, this week in Congress, which I think was pretty awesome. But absolutely, that guy is evil mother guy. He's an evil guy, and what he's doing to federal agencies and the work our government can do for the people is just horrifying. So he's on my Biden list. He's going to be there forever until we get rid of him. Which again we'd like to do in 14 months, or in 2 years and 14 months, I guess. But do everything we can to make that happen. All right, so hey, let's do news of the week. I am gonna go ahead and just acknowledge it right now because it's like.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
right?
Please.
You know how I like to interrupt.
Yeah,
no disrespect.
No, never. Hey, look, we even had a graphic for Biden lists right there. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know if that's going to make me pronounce it any better, but I'll practice over the week. Okay. Have you all heard about Agenda 2030 has been leaked out?
Is it worse than Project 2025?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to know about it.
It's like the next wave. Well, we don't want to know, but we got to know so we can diffuse it or make sure that we get the right president in there. But that's your homework for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Find out about Agenda 2030. I think that everyone needs to know what it is.
All right. Agenda 2030. Find out about it, people. All right. So now we're going to go right into news of the week. We got some important stories we're going to share with you, and really excited to get that kicked off. And I think I'm going to take the first story, but we're not all about eat your vegetables, here's your news, bad news. We want to have fun on this show, so I tried to have a little fun this weekend. I went to the Woodland Art Fair. I don't know, Nema, did you make it to the art fair this weekend? You're muted.
No, I did not. It was, it's too hot. It's just too hot. It's too hot. No, I did not make the Woodland Art Fair because it's too hot.
Let me fill you in. It was, I concur. It was warm, maybe too warm. But in addition to the great paintings, the photography, the sculpture, woodcut prints, the pottery, there was a booth there supporting the Team Kentucky Pre-K for All campaign. This is the first time I've seen this public-facing grassroots campaign for pre-K. I think it's a clear sign that our friend Governor Beshear understands that what he's been doing ain't working with the GOP supermajority in Frankfort. As we probably know, we've covered in the past, one of his biggest budgetary priorities since he's been the governor is try to get the funds and the support for pre-K for all in our fair Commonwealth. So this January, the legislature is going to come together. They're going to set the state's 2-year budget. This is probably Andy's last shot at getting the program funded and set up. So, I think that's why we saw the kind of the charm offensive. There's a lot going on. Speaking of Frankfort, this story comes to us from the Kentucky Lantern. And this is a really it stems from what Andy's trying to do to win this pre-K for all. So he brought in a Republican legislature from Alabama who made the case for supporting early childhood education, which is, I think really, really something that a lot of people care about. And, this Representative Jenna Ross, who's a former educator, former secretary of her state's Department of Early Childhood Education, said Alabama's pre-K program has survived Democratic and Republican governors. It's always been a bipartisan program with bipartisan support and strong local and community support as well. And she said that the structuring the program, setting up the program was really driven by the awareness about brain development in young children and how important it was that in those early years, so much was going on, and that the early experiences that children had really set their trajectory for the rest of their lives. Really important information for sure. Also, the committee heard from Stephen Barnett, who is with the National Institute for Early Education Research at Rutgers University. He said children who attend pre-K are more likely to be ready for kindergarten, be healthier, and live longer. So this is this advisory committee that was set up through an executive order that the governor signed, and is really moving forward to help tell the story of pre-K and why it's really important. It shared that these programs are working in red, blue, and purple states: Alabama, Georgia, West Virginia, states that are close to us, and it's boosting pre-K attendance and the educational outcomes for kids in these states. So, it's like they're all in. The auditor actually just, issued a report, an audit of the Department of Education. She's, of course, an elected Republican. Her audit was not as kind to the Department of Education as probably some would have hoped. But Senator Reggie Thomas, asked her directly, well, if we aren't getting the educational outcomes that we want, doesn't that directly make the case for pre-K? And she's like, well, there's a lot of things we do need to do in funding of education. She didn't preclude the idea of it, but she said that's not where she would spend money first. Of course, she's the auditor, so I guess not exactly acknowledged as an educational expert. But this is, I think, a really interesting issue, and I wanted to hear from my co-hosts on this one, specifically around what do you guys think about the kind of political implications of this? Obviously, let's not, we're not going to be idiots. The governor is running for president, right? We can just acknowledge that he is exploring it. He's setting himself up to be a candidate. And whether he says yes or no in the Sunday shows he gets on, I think it's pretty clear he's making the moves he would want to make. How do you think that, influences the effort to get pre-K for all? I don't know. Nema, you're really in the throes of education stuff. What do you think about this?
Well, first of all, we're even having to make a case for pre-K for all. Just shows you the political maneuvering that's going on here in Kentucky around this issue. I believe fully that public education should not be a partisan issue. It should be a bipartisan thing that we all work on together for the betterment of our communities. But I will say this, that to me, this is a no-brainer. It's been a no-brainer. If we want to improve outcomes, we have to start these kids at a level where they all come in as close to the same as possible. That happens in the pre-K years, right? I think a lot of people think we're going to have these kids reading in pre-K, all this other stuff. But, the reality is, at least from the teachers that I talk to and I hear from on a daily basis, the reality is that the earlier we can get kids on this trajectory where we can be reading to them, where they can be listening and playing and doing all of these things, then we have better outcomes at the end. It just makes sense to me. And here's the other thing that I think so many people don't understand. With the cost of childcare these days, it is almost impossible to pay for more than one. I mean, we keep hearing, oh, we don't have enough kids in this country. Well, one of the reasons why is because we cannot sustain ourselves as a society anymore on a one-person family income. And women deserve the right to work as much as anybody does. And what this is it will free up more women to return to the workplace if they left during COVID. And it will also free that up for women to actually leave the home and actually be able to participate. Economically, this is going to help our community. You know, we're hearing all the time about how everybody's got to get to work. Everybody's got to get to work. But the reason that we're holding up pre-K seems to me just to be political. Like nobody wants to give a win to Andy Beshear. And I'm going to tell you, if that's the case, and I believe a lot of it is the case, if that's the case, shame.
Yeah.
Shame on every elected in Frankfort, because you are holding up something that is vital to our kids and our families here in the Commonwealth, purely because of political reasons. And then you turn around and beat up our teachers and our parents and everybody else for these scores not being exactly where you think they should be. We start now. Let's do it. Let's do the work. Let's commit to it together. Let's stop putting kids in the middle of political nonsense and let's get it done.
Yeah. Fired up, Nema. But making that point though, like how is politics entering into this equation, right? Because it is, I think, on its face, and all the analysis shows it's a good investment of public dollars to set these pre-K for all programs up. It increases adoption of those programs, across the Commonwealth in places that really desperately need it. We know kind of early childhood education. We know just child care is really hard. That folks really have a hard time getting that across our Commonwealth. So this is a really important program. I don't know, Kimberly, what do you think about the political ramifications of that and the conversation that's been happening? Because it is something he started saying, like his first days as a governor, he wanted to do this, and it's been blocked each and every year. Kimberly, what do you think?
Exactly. So I don't feel like this is just some type of tagline to run for president. Oh, I also want to say this. Who told you first that he was going to run for president? That's all I want to. I just want to put that out there anytime I have the opportunity, so that I can get the credit that I already said this like 2 years ago. But anyway, pre-K is extremely important. My children are grown now. They're 34 years of age. My son and my daughter, who I'm with right now here in Saudi, is 37, and she'll be 38 in November. My son will be 35 in November. So they're grown. But both of them attended Head Start. And just from where I sit and just, seeing their journey, their educational journeys, my daughter's working on a second master's right now from the Air Force Military School, military organization and leadership. So I think that when kids, I don't have any statistics for this, but just people that I know, kids that get that basic education starting that young, they do tend to graduate high school. They do tend to go to college or some type of technical school. So I'm all for it. I stand behind and I stand beside Andy Beshear on just about everything. I am a fangirl, and not because he's Andy Beshear, but because of what he stands for. So no, there's nothing about this for any type of big election. It's just who he is and what he believes in, because he's talked to people like myself all around Kentucky that knows it's imperative.
I do wonder, does this push, this kind of really what is ultimately the kind of final opportunity for him to get this across the finish line? Is it going to come, obviously Nema pointed out, there's probably some political motivations in the folks who don't want it because they don't want to give him a win. But it's if he can't get the win, does that knock the wind out of his sails in terms of his story of being, a Democrat who cares from a deep red state, and the ability to, I think the story is that he's got this ability to, get support from Republicans, which I think he gets support from Republicans at the polls. I don't think he gets any support from Republicans in Frankfort, right? So, if he has a high-profile effort to get this across the finish line and it fails, does that hurt his ability to, make a effective and compelling case that he should be a national leader?
No, not at all. Not at all. Because his dossier has so many amazing things in it that we would have to have an entire show of 2 hours just to talk about it. So the reason why he you're not gonna do it, okay? So. But anyway, I just know that there were presidents in office, Barack Obama, Biden, that had, the unfortunate situation of Republican rule. And so a lot of things weren't passed, but everybody knows where their heart was.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing here. We know that this is a deep red state. Like this state right here, it is like, how when blood dries a little bit, it gets real dark, almost a maroon. This is a dark red state. And it says a lot about who he is to be able to be the governor twice.
Yeah.
And he has done some amazing things.
All right.
So
we do, as much as I would love to hear more about how fantastic Andy Bashir is, I do feel like we need to move on. We got a couple other stories we want to cover.
I think you're jealous.
Oh yeah, no, I'm totally jealous. And also we have an amazing guest, so we want to get to Bill McKibben as soon as we can. But I wanted to cover a couple of stories pretty briefly, quickly. Although this is one that needs some attention. So Nema, you got story number 2.
So I don't know if you all been following the news. I know, Miss Kim, you've not because you're completely out of the country right now. But there's been a little bit of a kerfluffle going on in Fayette County Public Schools in regards to the budget. And thank you, Aaron. At Monday night's board meeting, a lot of things came to a head, as you can see the headline here: angry critics blast FCPS leaders. And it's been a bumpy road for a little bit on the budget. Let me give you guys a quick debriefer of what got us to this point. For those of you all who don't know, we started talking about the budget here in Fayette County back in probably December, November of last year. It's almost a year-long process for schools. And so there started becoming more and more questions as to, are we okay? Because I think you all understand that there's been, a lot of cuts, a lot of lawsuits filing, going back and forth, a lot of uncertainty about funding at the state and federal level for public education. Obviously, we're under attack in the public education community, and it's just continuing. And so there was a lot of uncertainty around it and some questions, and everything was fine. Well, then it wasn't fine. And then we ended up being in a $16 million deficit. So we tried to pass an occupational license tax here in Fayette County. The district did, the board. And you have to follow certain guidelines to do that, which one of them is to have a public comment period so many weeks between now and the time that you raise the tax. And then, of course, that tax is also could be a recall, can be recalled. So you have all these factors. Well, Fayette County sped up that process. And the AG ruled that their voting to increase the tax was not constitutional, that they had violated statute, and so they would have to try again. So then the district formed a larger budget committee aside from their standing budget and finance committee, and brought in all kinds of voices. AFT was, we were lucky to have a seat at that table so we could look at the books. It was 3 meetings over 2 hours each meeting. So about 6 hours, various members of the community came together, looked at it, and basically suggested that we don't do the occupational license tax. Not right now. There's too much here going on with inflation, people hurting. We have a lot of issues with affordable housing in this community. You know that, Aaron. And so there's a lot of stress that's going to be placed on our families, our small businesses, and that's what this would do. And so the committee said, no, we think that you can take money from the contingency fund to pay this and then make the appropriate adjustments in the next coming years. Well, then it comes out that, surprise, the contingency fund is not up to what it needs to be, that it's probably at the state level, which is 2% of your overall budget, but it's not. It might be at our policy in here in Fayette County, which is a 6% contingency fund that we always have. And now we might not have either, but we're not really sure. And so, as you can imagine, many folks here in Fayette County are aggravated at the process more than the tax. And let me be very clear when I say that. People are upset because they don't feel as though their government is listening to them. And we've seen this. We know this feeling. We know it right now, how frustrating it is. I mean, even to get pre-K passed in this state, you know how frustrating it is. And so what we've reached is now we've reached this crescendo of voices where it's not people who, a lot of people outside of this city have assumed that these critics and these voices calling for accountability from the district are coming from conservatives who hate public education. And I'm here to tell you right now, that is not the case at all. It's not the case. The voices are coming from both sides of the aisle because everybody understands, because we pay attention to what's going on in Jefferson County and has been going on. We understand that you don't want the attention of Frankfort because we know what they've tried to do and have done in Jefferson County. And so what's happened is now we've prided ourselves in Fayette County to be able to make our budget, to be able to provide world-class opportunities for kids. And now that is literally in a crisis situation. Now, let me be clear. Fayette County is not the only county in the state that's experiencing cuts or uncertainties in budgets. They're not. But what has been different is the approach that the school board has taken and the district leadership has taken in explaining this critical situation to the public. Listen, we supported Andy Beshear here 70-30, okay, in Fayette County. We supported not approving Amendment 2. We voted no on Amendment 2. Strong. There are strong ties to our public education system, not only in Fayette, but in Kentucky. And what this has done, I'm afraid, is it has created this total mistrust with anything. And I'll tell you all, I'm an activist. This is my passion. This is what I do. I'm concerned. Because the trust has been violated to the point where no one thinks anybody's telling them the truth. And you know as well as I do what happens to government when everyone starts peeping and creeping about, wondering if they're being lied to or not and why. And so then you start getting into all this political maneuvering and all these things. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is that we cannot afford to allow harmful cuts to happen to our most vulnerable students. And we all know during times of financial crisis, it's always the people who don't have a voice at the table that are the first ones on the menu. We are concerned in AFT. We have been talking about imminent cuts because of federal cuts, because of whatever reason. We've been talking about this issue for 3 years in Fayette County, trying to explain to not only district leadership, but also to our community and saying, listen, if we do not have a legally binding collective bargaining agreement, which opens up the books, that's what it does. It opens up the books. We're talking all the books. You cannot hide anything. It legally opens the books for the people who directly work with students to look at it and help allocate resources that our most vulnerable kids need, and gets it to the kids in the classrooms directly, and maybe bypasses some of this other stuff this frilly stuff that we may or may not need. We want it to provide free lunch for all of our kids. That should be mandatory in Fayette County. We are a wealthy district. We should be able to pay for our kids to eat every single day. But now we're in a situation where we might have to raise lunch rates on families who are already struggling. So what we are saying is one possible solution is to open these books, allow the people that do the work with the kids to be able to say, Let's do this. Let's negotiate. It's not collective bullying, it's collective bargaining. And so let us negotiate. And we are collectively bargaining for the collective good of our community. And that is the message that we need to be sending right now. I encourage everybody that watches this or listens to this, I encourage you to go to a school board meeting. I encourage you to attend a city council meeting. I encourage you to attend any meeting at the lowest basic level of our government and see what is going on in your name. Because I want to be very clear. The board is an elected position that is required to listen to the voices of their constituents. It isn't a rubber stamp. It isn't some kind of like potluck, committee at church. It is the real deal where we deal with the most basic needs of our community, all of our community. We need all of our board to work together. I don't care if they like each other or not. We need all of our community to put our arms around our kids right now and say, what is it that we need? What is it that we don't need? And how do we get through this together?
Yeah, it's a big crisis. The idea that they didn't even know how much, still don't know how much is in the contingency fund is a huge red flag, that they just don't know what they're doing financially. Their fiscal house is not in order. I think opening the books to make sure that, union represented teachers can be in the conversation, really smart move. What is the timeline for that decision, Nema? And what is what can people do? Like, when's the next meeting of the board?
Okay. So the next meeting is what they decided at the last board meeting, which was a 4-hour plus board meeting. It was contentious at times. What is going to happen is they're going to go ahead and hold a public comment period, and post it and do all the things, which is what the AG required of the last go around at this. They're going to have a public comment period. They're not voting on anything. It'll come. So that public comment is going to be September 5th. We're not sure the date of the time or the place yet, but it'll be September 5th. Then on September 8th is the planning meeting at 5:30 at the central offices. And what will happen there is they will discuss the comment. They will not vote, I don't believe, one way or the other until the end of September or even at the September 8th meeting. Either way, those two meetings are incredibly important. We're not sure how that's going to work yet, but have your voice heard. We can do this if we, and not harm our kids. But all of us are going to have to look at it and really be okay with it.
Yeah. Fundamentals of democracy, school board. Yeah. So if you don't know who your school board representative is, you should go online and figure that out and then reach out to them directly. But look at these dates. If you are in Fayette County, if you are a taxpayer like Nema and I, if you're a parent like Nema and I, you've got skin in this game for sure. And we should be paying attention. All right, so we're going to move to our final story. It's kind of a collection of stories really quick. And Dr. Kimberly Cecil Jones is going to bring that to us.
Thank you very much. And I'm so glad that I have the honor today of our guest for this story. And it's in honor of him, the Clean Energy Roundup. We've got a bit of good news, bad news, kind of a situation this week. I'm going to give you the good news first. Ford's Hardin County battery plant has entered production mode. The first Ford Lightning batteries have rolled off the assembly line. This is a multi-billion-dollar investment, the largest of Governor Beshear's term. The first of the announced EV electric vehicle supply chain factories to reach this milestone. The workers will be voting next week on whether to form a union and join the UAW. You can also see our recent episode, which included an interview with a Ford Blue Oval SK on worker and organizer about why she's fighting for a union. Now, sort of on the bad news side of things, in a story from the Lexington Herald Leader, the Fayette County Council voted unanimously to move forward solar regulations that would ban large-scale solar farms on agricultural farmland. The Lexington Fayette Urban County Council voted unanimously during a Tuesday work session to move forward the zone text amendment that outlines what types of solar can go where. The vote comes after a meeting lasting longer than 3 hours, where more than 25 people spoke for or against allowing solar in agricultural areas. And what has become a key fight over where solar should go, along with the ban, the council also made several changes to a proposed zone text amendment that would limit large-scale solar installations to 1% of land in the agricultural zone, which would be about 1,800 acres. Shell's Silicon Ranch had been pursuing an 800-acre array on farmland in eastern Fayette County. Definitely a setback for a city that has a goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and very little renewable energy online or in development, though they are pursuing a solar project on a decommissioned landfill. I truly believe the friend of the show, Edelin Renewables. I know I didn't say that right. Aaron, help us, Sister Al over here. You got me over here like falling.
Edelin, Adam Edelin, right? Former auditor, right? Good Democrat, and now is a renewable
Are
energy
you sure
developer.
that's how you spell Edelin? It doesn't look right. Renewables.
Take it up with his dad. I don't know.
Well, they're supporting that effort. So, hey, it's Adam Edelin. There we go. So that leads us into back to you, Aaron.
Super. Thanks for that quick, clean energy roundup. We're really excited about our guest tonight. This is, a hero of mine for many years, really. Bill McKibben is the author of more than 20 books, including the bestsellers, The End of Nature, Falter, and Deep Economy. He's the founder of Third Act, a project organizing people over 60 for progressive change. Lives in Vermont with his wife, the writer Sue Halpern. His newest book, Here Comes the Sun, is on the shelves now, I think, actually. So really thrilled to be having Bill McKibben join us this fine evening. Bill, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. We actually got a little rain, much needed up here in the Green Mountains of Vermont after a long summer of drought. So we're all feeling a little relieved this evening.
Nice. You gotta love some nice rain, especially in the summer. So, Bill, you've been at it for a while. Many people call it The End of Nature the first general audience book on climate change. You've also been an activist for a while, and also I've been at this work for a minute. In fact, this is not the first time that you and I have been together in an endeavor. This was a incredibly cold day. I want to challenge you. Do you remember what this was?
Absolutely. That was Washington, D.C., Climate Forward in probably 2012 or so. And it was a big, I remember marching through the streets of Washington holding that banner we had about 50,000 people out there that day. It was pretty great.
Yeah, it was a great showing. I was honored to be there helping work on Gulf Coast issues at the time. But yeah, that Facebook picture showed up. I'm like, hey, look, there's me and there's Bill. Yeah, so at any rate, wanted to remind you of that very, very cold March. That was a very cold March.
I'll just tell you one good Kentucky memory of marches on Washington. The very first time that we organized around coal in DC, and we're trying to close down the coal-fired power plant that was powering Capitol Hill. The guy who showed up first and foremost to help was my old friend Wendell Berry. And I remember at some point, that was a cold day too, and at a certain point he said to me, "It's getting pretty cold out here. You think they'd be willing to arrest us soon?" I've always remembered that. So good for Wendell and good for Kentucky.
Yeah, Wendell Berry, absolutely, just a hero of these efforts as well. So yeah, you've got a new book. Tell us about it, would you?
I will, and it goes directly to what Dr. Cecil Jones was just talking about. This is, for once, good news that I have to bring. I know that everything is going wrong in this country, and I know that most things are going wrong in this world. The one big good thing that's happening right now is the extremely rapid spread of clean, renewable energy, mostly from the sun, over the last about 36 months. This has taken off so fast and so hard around the world. It's the fastest growing energy source in the world, but it's the fastest growing energy source in the history of the world. And I can't hardly begin to explain just how fast it's growing. Let me give you a couple of examples. In California, which is the part of this country that's taken it most seriously, they're now generating every day more than 100% of their power for long stretches from sun and wind. And that means that at night, when the sun goes down, the biggest source of supply on the grid of the world's fourth largest economy are batteries that didn't even exist 3 years ago. California is using 40% less natural gas to produce electricity this year than they were 2 years ago. That's the kind of number that begins to knock some tenths of a degree off how hot the world eventually gets, and it's a big deal. It's especially a big deal because California is no longer leading this country. The state of Texas, despite being the home of the hydrocarbon industry, is now the fastest growing renewable place in this country, and it's going up like gangbusters. Nothing that's happening in this country begins to compare with what's happening in the rest of the world, especially China. The Chinese are becoming the world's first electrostate, not petrostate, but electrostate. In May, they were putting up solar panels at the rate of 3 gigawatts a day. Now, a gigawatt is the rough equivalent of a coal-fired power plant, a big one. So they were putting up a coal-fired power plant's worth of solar panels every 8 hours in May in China. Those are unbelievable numbers. The reason they're happening is because 4 or 5 years ago, we passed some invisible line where power from the sun became cheaper than power from setting things on fire. That is good news not only for the climate, it is good news for the 9 million people a year who die on this planet and the tens of millions who get childhood asthma because they have to breathe the particulates that come when you put this stuff in the air. And it should be good news for all of us because we can imagine a world now that runs on something that's available everywhere all the time. Think how many fewer wars we would have fought in the last 70 years if oil was of trivial value. Humans are good at fighting wars, but they're going to have a hard time figuring out how to fight one over sunshine. Now, the drawback here, the fly in the ointment, is what's happening in this country. Because uniquely around the world, we have a president who says global warming isn't real. And because the fossil fuel industry got scared, if I know that California is using 40% less natural gas, you best believe that the headquarters back in Houston know that. They spent more money than they've ever spent by far on the political system last year. You'll recall candidate Trump explaining that if he got $1 billion from the oil industry, they could have anything they wanted. They ended up, between donations and advertising and lobbying, putting about $500 million into the last election cycle. And that turned out to be plenty because they're getting everything they could ever have dreamed of. We have to stand up to that. It's going to be hard to do in Washington until we have another election, but we can do it at the state and local level all over the place. And we can do it across ideological and partisan lines. That's why we're having this thing called Sunday on Sunday, the 21st of September, which is the fall equinox. And there will be things happening all across the country, people doing EV and e-bike parades, solar powered music festivals, people opening up their homes to show off their heat pumps or their solar panels to their neighbors to demystify them. And some places there'll be angry protests outside proposed gas pipelines that we don't need because we should be using clean energy. There'll be a real effort to persuade people like the ones that Dr. Cecil Jones was talking about, who think that we shouldn't use our land to grow the crop of clean electrons that we need. They'll be pointing out that all over the country, we now have great innovations in agrivoltaics and letting farmers get a stable income from the solar panels on their land and continue to grow lots of things in the rows between those panels. We live in a world where shade is an increasingly important commodity, and solar panels are a good source of it. I know that you guys are in bourbon country, but I was just reporting on these trials in France of wine grapes showing that the yield went up 60% when they were grown in fields with solar panels. So there is a huge amount that we can do, and we can do it across ideological lines. I want to tell you one story before I let you ask me a question, and it's about something called balcony solar. Across Europe for the last 2 years, really since the invasion of Ukraine, millions and millions and millions of apartment dwellers have been putting up what they call balcony solar. 3 million Germans. They just go to whatever the German equivalent of Best Buy is, and they come home with a solar panel that they just hang over their railing, and it just plugs straight into the wall. No permits needed, no licenses, no contractor, and it produces in many cases 20%, 25% of the power that they use. Now that's illegal every place in America except the state of Utah, where the hugely Republican legislature, by unanimous vote, passed enabling legislation 2 months ago because some good state legislator there, a libertarian, stood up and said, I don't see why the people of Hamburg and Stuttgart can get to do this, but not the people of Provo or Salt Lake City, or for that matter, the people of Lexington or Louisville. So these are the kind of things we want to get people engaged in, but we can only do it if we can drive home the notion that this is the future. It's not alternative energy anymore. It's the common sense, straightforward way to the future. 95% of new generating capacity last year in this country and in this world came from sun and wind. It's time for us to figure that out. This is not the Whole Foods of energy, nice but pricey. This is the Costco of energy. And the sooner we figure that out, the farther we're going to get.
That's great. This is super, it's hopeful, it's helpful. It's a wonderful book. I'm really thrilled to have read it. I finished it the night before last. And really it is it gave me a spring in my step. Right. But then I think about here we are, we're in Kentucky, we're dead last in the nation in terms of renewable energies, wind and solar production. If you paid much attention to our last governor's race, but Kelly Craft was running for governor. She's married to Joe Craft, one of the biggest political funders in our state, also in the nation, huge coal baron. He'll likely be buying the world's most expensive ham this week at the state fair. It's another story for another time. But that connection of coal cash in Kentucky and Frankfurt in DC, it really is just, hard to get out from behind. And, I think it's, you pointed out $500 million was enough for the oil companies to get. They aren't getting half of what they want. They're getting all of what they want. But more clean energy projects were canceled in the first quarter of 2025 than the past 2 years combined, according to research from Atlas Public Policy. Since January, these cancellations and downsized projects have amounted to about $14 billion in abandoned investments. You make the point in the book that it's really challenging for clean energy projects and investments to happen when there aren't durable political systems. Aren't we basically that right now?
Yeah. Poor old Joe Biden did his best to give us the footing we needed. That Inflation Reduction Act was designed to help us start to catch up to China. But of course, the Congress and the Trump administration got rid of it. If you want to put up solar panels, move fast, because those tax credits are going to expire on New Year's Eve this year instead of lasting for a decade. And if you're an American patriot, and I grew up in the other Lexington in Massachusetts, so I've spent my summers as a high school kid telling the stories of the beginning of the American Revolution. If you're an American patriot, this should piss you off in no small measure. This stuff was invented in the US. The solar cell was invented at Bell Labs in New Jersey in 1954. I'm old enough that I helped fund that work by putting dimes in payphones, when I was a kid. Now the Chinese are going to own the future. They're not eating our lunch. We sent a red-capped crew of waiters over to Beijing to serve the lunch up. It's astonishing to watch the Trump administration decide to cede the future and if they have their way, which I am determined they will not, but if they do, 15 years from now, the U.S., if you can get a tourist visa to come, it'll be to look at the kind of colonial Williamsburg of internal combustion. People will come to gawp at how they did it in the old days, That's not what we want, and that's why we're doing things like Sunday. So go to sunday.earth, people, and come up with a couple of good small projects in Kentucky to try and join this national movement and to start driving home the message that needs to be driven home there, that this is the future. And Kentucky is a perfect place for it, bathed in sunshine. And the fact that my family's all from next door in West Virginia. So I know what happens when the coal industry owns a state, and I know what they leave behind. And that's not at all like what's happening with solar panels. These are ways to safeguard our landscape and our future, and we should get on them as fast as we can. One of the arguments that really needs to be made over and over again is electricity prices are starting to go through the roof. And that's partly because people keep shutting off this option of the cheapest power in the world. But it's not just electricity prices. It's also things like insurance prices, which are going through the roof because nobody knows how the insurance industry is going to deal with climate change. It's all but impossible for it. So on every front, it makes good, practical, common sense to stop living in the 18th century and start living in the 21st century.
Excellent. I think Nema, you've got a question for Bill.
Yeah, I do. There's all these really cool things that I can't even pronounce, Bill, if I can be completely honest. But there's like your solar balconies and all those things. How do we get Kentucky to get more of these things? Like how do we do that? And I'm from coal country, so this is one of those things that I'm fully aware that is, a little prickly of a situation in coal country because the ties to coal as a culture, more so as a industry. And so how do we convince folks? I just saw a story, Bill. I don't know, Aaron, if you saw it, but there was a church down in Letcher County where I'm from who was devastated by the floods that took place last year in Letcher County. And they just put in all new solar. They're going completely solar at the church. Even the coal museum down in Letcher County is powered by solar. So I think that's starting to become a thing, but how do we really get the buy-in?
Well, I think that this is a place where organizing really pays off. And I would start with something relatively attainable and easy, like this balcony solar stuff. If they can do it in Utah, there's no reason not to do it there. And it makes great sense because it's not expensive for people to do and immediately starts impacting their bottom line. So that's a place I'd start. And I wouldn't bother making a huge amount of argument about climate change about it. I'd make an argument about why it is that you don't have the right to easily capture the sun that falls on your roof or your balcony. This is America, after all. You shouldn't be prevented from doing that by a lot of rules and regulations. This stuff's no more dangerous to install than a new refrigerator, and you would be balk at somebody telling you couldn't put a new refrigerator in without 9 inspections from the county or whatever. Time to do the same sort of thing with this kind of stuff. I think you can get this one done. And I think that's the kind of, I think among other things, it's a good gateway drug, as it were, a kind of introduction to the power of the sun. Once you start watching that, once you start looking at the app on their phone and seeing your electric meter turning backwards, you begin to really sense what the future might be like if we can get this done.
That's awesome. I think, Kimberly, I have a question for Bill.
Yes. First of all, I love the name of the book, Here Comes the Sun. It reminds me of that song, right? And so, yeah, here comes the sun. And nobody wants to hear me sing, but
well, it's kind of good.
Well, over here in Dammam, where I am right now in Saudi Arabia, I've seen some solar over here. I don't know if it's legal, illegal. I don't know but I've seen it. And right here in this like subdivision of these villas that my daughter lives in, I've seen a lot of solar. And you wouldn't really specifically think about that, knowing that that's a lot of oil country right here where I am right now. But they've got some solar things going on. But Mr. Bill, the only reason why I did this show tonight is because you were going to be on here, and I wanted to make sure I was on here. Due to the big bogus bill, the big beautiful bill, Trump has cut pretty much of the Inflation Reduction Act clean energy investments, as we know. We're losing solar tax credits years earlier than expected. So should the folks be acting now on things like rooftop solar installations? Should we be getting ourselves whatever we can get right now before it gets worse?
Absolutely. So act before New Year's Eve for rooftop solar. You need it installed and ready to go to get that tax credit, and act before the end of September if you want an EV with the big tax credit. The Republicans are doing their best to make it very hard for us to access this stuff, but it's important to get going now on just those things. And I am so glad that you're noticing what's happening in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, they're no dummies. They're putting this stuff up as fast as they can. They're going to be some of the most advanced solar countries in the world within a few years. Look, these guys are rich and they're determined to stay rich. They're not going to let the world pass them by. They're using their money to stay in the forefront of things. It's only in this country that we have big political parties saying, let's go back 100 years and see how that works, because it's not going to work very well. So I'm really glad you're noticing that. And I'm really glad that everybody in Kentucky is getting on board. I helped found this thing called Third Act that organizes old people like me for action on climate and democracy. And we've got about 100,000 people around the country now. For the next month, they're all hard at work on Sunday. They'll be a big part of that. And that just goes to show that it's not just, young tech-minded people, whatever, that understand this. This is for people of all kinds who have an apartment or a home and who think about their home as their castle. That's why, since I lived on dirt roads in red states and blue my whole life, I know that many of my most conservative neighbors put up solar panels just because they want their home to be their castle. We can do this. It just means getting past the people who own coal mines and oil wells. And I know that's harder in Kentucky than it is in Vermont. We're blessed by the fact that there's nothing valuable under our soil at all. But I have no doubt that you all will get this done just as fast as you can.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us. I did want to just offer, so we mentioned earlier in the show, Dr. Cecil Jones mentioned the first, actual battery packs are rolling off the assembly line this week at that enormous, I don't know if you've seen it. I think you can see it from space. The thing is so huge in E-Town. But, Meanwhile, all the Republicans in our delegation are doing everything in their power to stop EVs from being sold, right? It is the oddest thing where technology has become, politicized. It's not, I guess, the oddest thing, right? We made like vaccines partisan. So I guess we can make anything partisan now. But it's staggering to me because they're just cool. It's just cool tech, right? It's just like, why wouldn't you want the cooler, quieter, faster car that you don't have to go to a gas station to power up? But as I was walking my dog earlier today, one of those Equinoxes, so the EV Equinox, which is a Chevy's like kind of price conscious SUV EV, drove past me, which I was always happy to see an EV on the roads. But it had a Friend of Coal license plate, because those are unique to Kentucky, the Friend of Coal license plate. But given our grid, it's actually the truth. If you are actually buying an EV right now, you're powering it largely on coal, because we have got one of the dirtiest grids in the country, but you're still making a climate improvement. What's your kind of take on, the kind of EVs from dirty power? How do you look at that whole kind of the math there?
Look, even if you're plugged directly into the dirtiest coal-fired power plant in the country, an EV is still way more helpful for the environment, just because the engine itself is so much more efficient. When you run an internal combustion engine, mostly what you're producing is heat, and 70% of the energy is just going into heat. Only about a third is being used to actually move the car down the road. I've driven EVs forever, since they started being available. They're a way better car than anything that I had ever driven before, on every count. They're quiet. If you like going fast, they go wicked fast, and they cost very little to run once you got them. There's very few moving parts to brake, and you only go to the gas station to pick up Dr. Pepper. That's it.
Diet Dr. Pepper. That's on you, buddy. All right. So I want to say thanks again for making yourself available to talking about your book. I want to thank you for your climate leadership. And this is another just really important book that people should go out and buy and read, or check out and read, whatever however you roll. We'll make sure there's a link to buy it in our show notes. Bill, any final thoughts about how people should be getting engaged, what we can be doing to stem this climate crisis?
Sunday.earth. Go to Sunday.earth and join in, man. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. We'll do it. All right. Thanks so much, Bill. Have a lovely rest of your week. And now, folks, really thrilled to just kind of wrap things up with our standard work here. We've got an exciting call to action. I hope everyone is paying attention to Nema as she brings you what you should be doing, making plans to do.
Yes. So Labor Day actions are being planned all across the country, including a big rally in Lexington. Make your plans to join us with AFT 120 Fayette, Progress Kentucky, Bluegrass Activist Alliance, 5051 KY, and the coalition of groups that have been organizing these mass mobilizations throughout the year. The event will be at Courthouse Plaza 5 through 8 on Labor Day. September 1st, Progress Kentucky will be tabling. Other organizations will be tabling. So come and say hi. You can RSVP on this Mobilize link. And I think, Aaron, you're dropping that in for us. Yes, there's the link right here. Love to have you all out. Remember, Labor Day should be more than a hot dog. It should be coming together as working folks and celebrating what we've accomplished together and what we can accomplish as regular working folk, rank and file. So come on out.
Nice. All right. And Kimberly, you want to close us out?
I sure will. It was a great show tonight. It's always a pleasure to be on here with Mr. Aaron Biles, and always Nema. You know how we do it, girl. And plus, I don't want you all to be jealous, because Mr. Bill gave me a compliment that he was so happy I was paying attention to that over here in Saudi. So don't be jealous. But let me give the disclaimer first. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, known as CAVE. And we are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Please make sure that you join us next week for our 225th episode just ahead of Labor Day. We'll check in on the state of the labor movement in Kentucky with the AFL-CIO, President Dustin Rainstedler. Did I say that right, Aaron?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Close.
Make sure to join us next week for that conversation. You know it's going to be on fire as we do it here on Kernels of Truth. Production of episode 224 was in kind by our very own Mr. Aaron Viles. You did a good job tonight, Aaron. Clap, clap for you. And Nate Orshan wrote and performed our theme song. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. Everybody say it with me. natosongs.com. And if you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, do not fret, my pet, because you can, on your audio podcast, and our show notes are always available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and just about wherever you get your podcast. And when you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review. You know it helps the algorithm, and everybody needs to hear the information that we push out to you every week. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate